Commander Elliot Shaw locked the inner airlock, his face unreadable as he removed his helmet. "The logs are clean, Leo," he said, his voice low and steady over the private station comms. "We saw nothing out there. Just a routine shield inspection." "Understood." I said nothing. Just gave a single, sharp nod from my post at the communications console. In space, silence is a tool. He wasn't asking a question. He was giving an order. "My name is Leo Vance. I'm 46 years old, and for the last 4 months, I've been the lead communications specialist aboard the International Space Station. For the last 4 minutes, I'd been a prisoner. Elliot Shaw was more than our commander. He was a national hero. The guy on the cereal boxes, the astronaut who read stories to kids from orbit, the man whose steady voice calmed a nation during the last shuttle crisis. He was also the man who had just spent 47 minutes on an unscheduled spacewalk, doing something he now intended to erase from history. I watched him on the internal monitors, moving with the easy grace of a man who'd spent more time in zero gravity than most people spend in their own backyards. He logged the EVA as complete, citing micrometeoroid shield degradation check as the reason. A lie. A clean, simple, and utterly damning lie. I turned back to my console, brought up the archived telemetry from the spacewalk, and replied with 2 words. "Understood, Commander." That was it. No argument, no questions, no accusations. Maria, our mission biologist, floated past, giving me a thumbs up. "Everything look good out there?" she asked, her voice cheerful. "Crystal clear," I replied, forcing a smile. "In a tin 250 miles above the Earth, you learn to compartmentalize. You have to." My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady on the keyboard. Truth is, my gut had been screaming at me for the last hour. The whole EVA was wrong. No advance notice, no ground confirmation, just a sudden, urgent declaration from Shaw that he'd seen a potential issue on an external camera and needed to check it personally. He'd ordered a full comms blackout with Houston, citing potential for signal interference with sensitive equipment, a protocol that existed, but was almost never used. I didn't confront him then, didn't demand answers. That's not who I am. I'm the guy in the background, the one who makes sure the signal is clean, the data is pure, and the lines of communication stay open. I'm a problem solver, not a troublemaker. But I wasn't naive either, so I made some quiet moves of my own. As Shaw was cycling the airlock, I duplicated the raw data stream from suit telemetry and the station's external sensors, shunting it to a redundant, isolated server partition he didn't know about. A little digital failsafe. A habit from years of dealing with system glitches and hardware failures. What Shaw didn't know was that I had prepared for a moment like this my entire career, just not with fellow astronaut. And what he didn't understand was that I never start fights, but I do finish them. I met Elliot Shaw 10 years ago at Johnson Space Center. I was a junior engineer then, designing telemetry protocols. He was already a rising star in the astronaut corps. He had this incredible ability to make complex astrophysics sound like a bedtime story. People trusted him instantly. I was no different. He'd stop by my lab, ask smart questions, remember my name, even asked about my daughter Chloe after he saw her picture on my desk. He became my mentor. When I applied for the astronaut program myself, he wrote my letter of recommendation. "Leo's the kind of guy you want watching your back when things go wrong," he told the selection committee. I didn't make the cut for command or pilot roles. My eyesight wasn't perfect, but my technical skills were unmatched. I was selected as a mission specialist, a communications expert. My first long-duration flight, and Shaw was my commander. It felt like the culmination of everything I'd worked for. Before the mission, during one of our final briefings, I mentioned that Chloe's middle school amateur radio club was participating in the ARIS program, amateur radio on the International Space Station. It's a program where we use our ham radio to talk to students on the ground. A fantastic outreach tool. "That's wonderful, Leo," Shaw had said, smiling that famous smile. "We'll make sure her school gets a prime slot. We need to inspire the next generation." I was so proud. My daughter, talking to her dad in space. I'd spent weeks with her club, teaching them about signal processing, how to filter out noise, how to pull a clear voice out of static. I even taught them about steganography, hiding messages in data as a fun spy game. A little puzzle for my little girl. I had no idea that game would become the most important thing I'd ever do. The mission was flawless for the first 4 months. We were a well-oiled machine. Shaw was the perfect leader. Calm under pressure, decisive, always ready with a word of encouragement. I trusted him completely. Then, about 3 weeks ago, things started to shift. Small things. Shaw started having encrypted, high-security video calls with a specific set of ground personnel. Not unusual for a commander, but these were with contacts at the Department of Defense, not NASA Mission Control. He became more guarded, spending hours in his private quarters, running simulations I wasn't privy to. I should have seen it coming, but you don't want to see betrayal in a man you admire. You make excuses. He's under pressure. He's dealing with classified matters. You trust the uniform, you trust the mission, and you trust the man who said he'd always have your back. 2 days after the spacewalk, the universe handed me my chance. A solar flare, a big one, erupted from the sun's surface, sending a wave of charged particles hurtling toward Earth. Our station was shielded, but some of the high-frequency communication arrays got blasted. My job, for the next 18 hours, I was tasked with diagnosing the damage and recalibrating our systems, which meant a deep dive into every bit of data that had been transmitted or received in the last 72 hours. I was in my element, sifting through terabytes of data, filtering out solar radiation noise, identifying corrupted packets. It was tedious, painstaking work, and I loved it. That's when I found it. An anomaly, a tiny encrypted data packet hidden in the station's background telemetry stream. It was designed to look like routine diagnostic data, but its encryption signature was wrong. Not NASA's, not Roscosmos, something else entirely. My heart started to pound. This packet had been transmitted during Shaw's spacewalk, right in the middle of his comms blackout. Using the station's main antenna would have been too obvious. This was different. This was a tight beam transmission, a laser-like signal aimed at a specific point on Earth. It was masked brilliantly, as background radiation, a whisper in a cosmic hurricane. I spent the next 6 hours isolating that whisper. I wrote a custom decryption algorithm based on some old military protocols I'd studied years ago. The file was small, just a handshake protocol and a burst of telemetry, but it contained 2 key pieces of information, the sender and the receiver. The receiver was a private defense contractor, Aegis Dynamics. They specialized in satellite espionage technology. The sender was a new, unregistered device attached to the station's primary truss. A device that wasn't on any NASA schematic. A device that was installed exactly where Shaw had been inspecting the micrometeoroid shield. I felt the blood drain from my face. Shaw hadn't been fixing something. He'd been installing something. A piece of illegal, unauthorized spy hardware for a military contractor, turning the ISS, a symbol of international scientific cooperation, into a military asset. He'd risked the safety of the crew, the integrity of the station, and diplomatic relationships with our international partners. For what? Money? Patriotism? I didn't know, and it didn't matter. Something inside me shifted. Not anger, not fear, just a cold, hard clarity. I closed the program and pulled out my personal tablet. I made a list. 1. Isolate the full data stream from a new device. 2. 3. Find proof connecting Shaw directly to the installation. 4. 5. Find a way to get the information to the ground. 6. 7. Do it without Shaw knowing. 8. I couldn't use the official channels. Shaw monitored all outgoing NASA communications. Any attempt to send this data would be blocked, and he would know I was on to him. I was in a cage with a lion, and my only way out was to be smarter than the lion. That night, I couldn't sleep. I re-examined the external camera feeds from the EVA. Shaw's helmet cam had conveniently malfunctioned, producing only static at the exact moment he was working on the truss. But the station's fixed cameras, while not getting a direct view, showed his shadow. The movements weren't consistent with his shield inspection. They were precise, methodical, the movement of a man installing a complex piece of hardware. The next day, I approached Shaw in the mess hall. "Commander," I said, keeping my voice casual. I was running diagnostics after the solar flare, and I found some strange signal artifacts around a K-band antenna. "Did you notice anything unusual during your EVA?" He didn't even look up from his meal pouch. "Everything was nominal, Leo. Probably just phantom echoes from the flare. Don't waste your time chasing ghosts." He knew. He was telling me to back off. That's when Wilson— No, wait! That was the old story. That's when I knew I couldn't beat him directly. I had to use a channel he wouldn't be watching. A channel he himself had approved. My daughter's school. The heiress contact. It was scheduled for next week. A 20-minute window where I would speak to Chloe and her classmates. It was a public event, live-streamed. Shaw would be there, standing beside me, smiling for the camera. He'd see it as a perfect piece of PR. He would never suspect it was a delivery system for his own destruction. I spent the next 3 days working on my plan. The evidence was digital. The encrypted handshake, the telemetry from the rogue device, the timestamps, the damning camera angles. I couldn't send files. They would be detected, but I could encode the data into something that would pass without inspection. Something innocent, something acoustic. I took the core data, the device's unique identifier, the coordinates of the Aegis ground station it was talking to, and the exact timestamp of the illegal transmission, and converted it into a binary string. Then, using the steganography software I'd taught my daughter about, I began encoding that data into an audio file. I hid it in the subtle frequency variations of sound, buried deep in the noise floor where no one would ever think to look. The sound I chose was a nursery rhyme. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." It was perfect, poetic even. A song about a mysterious star, sent from the stars, carrying a secret. I practiced singing it, embedding a slight, almost imperceptible digital warble into my voice, a warble that contained the entire case against Commander Elliot Shaw. To the human ear, it would sound like a minor radio glitch. To a computer running the right software, it would be a confession. The day of the heiress broadcast arrived. I felt a strange calm. Shaw floated beside me in the Destiny module, wearing his blue NASA polo, the American flag prominent on his sleeve. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Ready to inspire some kids, Leo?" he asked, his voice full of warmth. "You bet, Commander," I said, meeting his gaze. The call came through. "ISS, this is Northwood Middle School. Do you copy?" The voice of the teacher, Mrs. Davison, was tinny and distant, filled with static. "We read you loud and clear, Northwood." I replied, my own voice betraying no emotion. They asked the usual questions. What's it like to float? What does space food taste like? Is it hard to sleep? I answered them all, Shaw nodding and smiling beside me. Then came the final question. It was Chloe, her voice clear and bright, cut through the 250 miles of vacuum. "Dad, can you sing me the song? The one you used to sing when I was little." My heart seized for a second. This was it. I looked at Shaw. He was beaming, thinking this was a heartwarming father-daughter moment. "I'd love to, sweetie," I said. I took a breath and began to sing. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." I sang it slowly, clearly, making sure the hidden data packets in the audio stream were clean and strong. As I sang the last line, I looked directly into the camera. I wasn't just singing to my daughter anymore. I was singing to the world. The broadcast ended. Shaw shook my hand. "That was great, Leo. Truly great. You made the agency proud today." "Just doing my part," I said. He had no idea what I'd just done. He thought he had one. But down on Earth, a group of 13-year-old kids in a science club were recording my song, just as I taught them. They thought it was another one of our spy games. They ran the audio file through the decryption software I'd given them. They weren't expecting to find anything. But then the data string appeared on their screen, a long string of numbers and letters. Chloe knew it wasn't a game. She recognized the format from the data security lessons I'd given her. She didn't call me. She didn't call NASA. She followed the emergency protocol I had taught her for if she ever found something that looked dangerous. She and her teacher sent an anonymous, encrypted email containing the audio file and the decoded data string to two places: the editor of the Washington Post and the office of the NASA Inspector General. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I lived in a state of suspended animation, going through my duties, interacting with Shaw, every conversation feeling like a scene from a thriller. He was relaxed, confident, believing he'd gotten away with it. I played my part, the loyal subordinate, the team player. The waiting was the hardest part, the not knowing if my message had even been understood. Then, one morning, everything changed. We received an urgent operational update from Houston. A new cruise shuttle was being sent up immediately for an unforeseen crew rotation. No other explanation was given. Shaw was furious, demanding answers, but Houston was stone-faced. New orders: Commander, pack your things. When the shuttle docked, it wasn't a new crew that came through the hatch. It was 2 grim-faced NASA security officers and a flight surgeon. They had orders to relieve Shaw of command and escort him back to Earth immediately, citing national security concerns. Shaw looked at me, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrified realization. He knew. He didn't know how, but he knew I was behind this. The mask of the hero finally fell away, replaced by pure, cold fury. He said nothing to me. The security officers escorted him to the shuttle, and just like that, he was gone. The federal case moved with astonishing speed once I was back on Earth. The data from a nursery rhyme was the key that unlocked everything. The Inspector General's office used it to get a warrant for Aegis Dynamics. The whole scheme came tumbling down. Shaw, it turned out, was deep in debt from a series of bad investments. Aegis had offered to wipe his slate clean and set him up for life in exchange for one small favor: planting their new toy on the most advanced surveillance platform in human history. He'd sold out his crew, his country, and the entire spirit of space exploration for a payday. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy, espionage, and a dozen other charges. The hero astronaut was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Aegis Dynamics was dissolved, its executives facing their own trials. The day the final paperwork was signed, I got a call from a new NASA administrator. "Your case has prompted a complete overhaul of our security protocols," she said. "You exposed a vulnerability none of us even thought to look for." She paused. "We found evidence they were planning to do this on future Moon and Mars missions. You didn't just save the ISS, Leo. You may have saved the future of our entire program." After we hung up, I sat on my back porch, watching the stars come out, thinking about those other missions, other crews who would have been put at risk. I hadn't planned on being a whistleblower. I just wanted to do what was right. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe, looking for satellites. Think I just saw one. I didn't take another mission to space. My time up there was over. I took a teaching position at a university, working on next-generation communication systems. I spend my weekends with Chloe, helping her club build better antennas, chase fainter signals. Sometimes she asks me about Shaw, about what happened up there. I tell her that sometimes the brightest stars are the ones that fall the hardest. And sometimes the most important messages aren't in the words people say, but in the quiet spaces in between, in the static, in a lullaby. You just have to know how to listen.